The Drizzle season trailer dropped, and as funny as the parallel to the earlier Sizzle season is, I can't help but see the gray, damp, boring connotation of Drizzle sometimes. Not a lot of content, some stages that make a lot of the same mistakes the stage designers have made throughout the game, fewer kits than we've had before. It feels like they're going through the motions. It didn't feel particularly special. It came with an announcement of the Idols Splatfest, which is odd, because that's always come at the end of a game's updates, and it feels a lot less climactic to me that it's being dropped now. In my initial reaction to it, I gave it a B-. They turned their work in. It wasn't particularly special, but it fulfilled their obligations. On Twitter, though, man, people were angry. I was seeing a lot of exclamations that Nintendo promised more, or that we deserved more, that Nintendo should take more input from fans. I didn't respond to that anger very well on Twitter, and I'd like to discuss and apologize for what I said that was wrong, and reword what I was trying to say in a medium where I'll have access to more nuance. Now look, it was a foundational moment of personal disillusionment for me when a grade school teacher taught me about how advertisements manipulate numbers to effectively lie to a consumer, misleading them into thinking you're offering more than you are. I got excited by Super Smash Bros. Brawl more than I'd been excited by most things, and then when I got it, I felt hurt and betrayed, so much so that I've never been a happy Nintendo fan since. I've had hashtag Save Smash in my Twitter username since the Squid House. I'm not someone who's going to just say give the benefit of the doubt to the major corporation. But also, Nintendo's doing exactly what they promised. This is an update with new weapons and maps and challenges and gear and table turf cards and an announcement for one of the more engaging Splatfests the game will have. This is exactly what we were promised. Obviously, it's not really what we want. We all have a vision in our head of what this game could be, and we care a lot about how well the game fits that vision because it's so much a part of us. We want this to be a popular game so we have people to meet by playing it and we can get our friends into it. We want it to be competitively fulfilling. We want our tournaments to be a big deal and for people to know about them so they can freak out about the big plays the way we do. Some parts of that are outside our control though, and that's frustrating. We've done so much to grow this game as a community. Our content creators have made it their full-time jobs, effectively, to market this game. Our tournament organizers volunteer time they could be spending, hanging out with friends or family, doing something they're gonna get paid for, on running events for this game instead. And same for people in production, and commentators, and the players themselves. There's a huge community of artists and people making merch for this game. For the contributions the fans have made, it can feel like we've earned better treatment, like we deserve the content we're hoping for. It reminds me a lot of the fandoms that arise around music artists and the parasocial relationships that develop there. Lots of music artists get told that their older work was better, and that they should just make more of that. I remember, for example, when Linkin Park, a band I grew up enjoying, released an album with a much softer, less angry single that caught on in a completely different demographic, who were then hilariously shocked to hear what the rest of the album sounded like. It got popular and was getting a lot of radio playtime, but the fans who had been around longer hated this, said they were selling out, talked about how they wanted more of the older stuff. Thing is, music is really personal. I look back on music I was listening to at different times in my life, and I can now say with the benefit of hindsight, wow, I was feeling really lonely back then. Wow, I was really angry at my parents about that one thing. Jeez, I was crushing so hard on that girl, just based on what I was listening to. Because I'm not in those situations in life anymore, that music feels weird to me now, alien, a reminder of a part of myself I've moved past. It's the same way with art we create, not just art that we consume. Asking a band to make stuff like they used to is also asking them to be like they used to. While there is immense beauty in expressing it, and catharsis that comes with it, I tried so hard and got so far and in the end it doesn't even matter, is not a place in life I want anyone to have to be in. If someone wants to make more upbeat music after writing all that, I wouldn't consider myself a fan of them if my first thought were, no, wait, go back to being sad. I liked the songs better when you were sad. Rest in peace, Chester Bennington. You cannot demand that someone be inspired to make a thing you want. I don't say that as if I'm refusing to grant you permission. I'm saying that because it's impossible. Artistic inspiration is not something that can be forced on someone else, and if anything, the forcing only makes it less possible. You can't make me like a band I don't like. You can only put me in the same room with their music and hope I come around to it eventually, and even then I might not. And in the same way, we can't make Nintendo's game developers see the visions we see for the game, especially if we're only ever putting those opinions on Twitter in a foreign language. Splatoon 1 came out in 2015, 8 years ago. Think about who you were 8 years ago. What was going on in your life? Look up some old pictures or social media posts from 2015. You probably weren't the same person then that you are now. Now imagine having worked on the same video game for all of that time. And actually think from a couple of years before then, because that's when development would have started. Even if you were there from the beginning and were inspired by that vision, I'd forgive you if that inspiration didn't last all this time. There are plenty of people, even whole teams, who have probably been moved on and off the project. So maybe the vision was never theirs to begin with, or when they came back it had changed into something different than what they had in mind when they first started. So yes, Nintendo isn't just one person. It can try its best to hire people who are really inspired to do their best work here. But if you're hiring someone onto a project that they didn't have a voice in from the beginning, it's like hiring an artist to finish someone else's painting. It's not as personal. It's not something that's going to matter to them in quite the same way, and they're not going to have the same style. They may just straight up not be as good at it because they're not making what's real for them, but trying to imitate what was real for someone else. They may have been really heavily impacted by the pandemic, maybe with people having to take time off work sick, or maybe with the social changes that happened across the world having a negative impact on their ability to have a good output. That's a problem with video games as a medium. They're not like sports, like soccer or basketball, which can get invented and then just be the same game for 100 years and nevertheless grow organically, be passed from parent to child, without any commercial pressure to ever produce a sequel. It's not someone's job to come up with a sport, but it's someone's job to keep making Splatoon games. Games are products. If you've sold one, the head of the company is going to want you to sell two, or patch the first one so many times it becomes an unrecognizable ship of Theseus in under a year, and they can keep reselling it to people. I'm a lot more critical of Nintendo for their decision, for example, to actively impede the competitive Smash scene, their game design decisions in Brawl that showed hostility toward the competitive players, in the clear targeting of certain well-liked mechanics. This season update isn't that. It's just a release that kinda missed. Felt like it was going through the motions. There have been music artists that I've liked that released albums that didn't feel great to me, and I still came back for the third album on the promise of their earlier work. And I'm sure there were Linkin Park fans who came back to their later albums despite being unhappy about that one single. This isn't the disaster that people are making it out to be. It's just Nintendo following up on what they'd agreed to do, adhering to the letter of the law instead of the spirit of it. Maybe the development schedule is a little too tight to get content out there super regularly with nice extra touches. An artist will never decide that their work is ready, but sometimes a little extra time really would go a very long way in an endeavor as complicated as making a game in a major franchise. We're not wrong to be disappointed by it. I definitely wish there were some way to give input on the map designs that they'd hear. I'm not alone in that. Plenty of people have been saying they feel a bit bummed out about it, that they were hoping there would be more, that more of what we did get would be exciting. It's not wrong to have criticism of their decisions, but I'm also not angry. Some people have been angry. And the sense I get of entitlement from the angry sentiments about it made me want to address it and create a little bit more empathy for developers, and really at the heart of it, artists in general. When I tried to address it, I did a bad job of it and ended up taking the tweet down a short time later. In that tweet, I suggested that Nintendo didn't benefit financially from really knocking our socks off with updates, since people had already bought the game, and therefore they weren't incentivized to support it outside of what they'd promised they'd do before we all bought it. I wish I hadn't said this, because I have no way of knowing that that's an accurate representation of the monetization model of a major video game these days. I was stepping really far outside my lane to try and claim I knew anything about it. It's entirely possible that good updates drive up future game sales by building a brand people trust to deliver. It's possible that there are other avenues of monetization besides game sales being driven. A number of people pointed this out to me, and I'm very grateful that they felt empowered to speak up and contradict me. Bronze and Gus come immediately to mind, but I know there were more. Y'all had a better head on your shoulders than I did in that moment. Something Ludwig says that I admire is that he wants to make sure he always has someone around who's willing to call him out if he's out of line. Because there are a lot of people around a content creator like him who admire him so much that they won't be critical. Sometimes I see nothing but positivity in the comments sections of one of my videos. And there's no way that's the only way anyone feels about anything I make, but I can't see the dissenting voices because they're not going to comment or feed the algorithm in any way. They're just going to click off or never click on it at all. So I don't have access to that criticism sometimes. For every one of the good faith critics, of course, there are also bad faith critics, or critics who know even less of what they're talking about than I do. I made an unrelated tweet recently expressing frustration about people saying something toxic and hiding behind pictures of cute animals to try and reduce the blowback they get for what they said. This has resulted in some people quote retweeting things I say with pictures of cats, just to spite me, to deliberately do the thing I said I don't like. When someone said people were beating me in the quote retweets, I wanted to make it clear that I had legitimate reasons for deciding to change my position, that I was listening to good faith criticism, not caving because someone was trying to ratio me on Twitter. I'll receive bad faith criticism whatever I do. It's part of the job, whether that's right or not. But there was a lot of contempt in the way I expressed it. I associate that kind of behavior with the immature ways the young teenagers I taught as a middle school English teacher were mean to each other. I don't care if one of my students tweets about how I'm horrible because I gave them a 0 for a paper they never turned in. And I feel the same way about these folks being antagonistic for the sake of being antagonistic. I totally understand, though, if this reply was interpreted as dismissive to the people who were making good faith criticisms, who had good points. And for that as well, I do apologize. Yeah, I'm disappointed with the new map designs because I think they could have been better. The weapon kits, because I think there could have been more. Especially since it's hard to imagine Machine and YouTuber getting better kits than what they already have. But hey, we finally have Gold Dynamo. Inkjet Brella is great for that weapon. We got a Salmon Run map back that I liked. Table Turf folks are never going to object to new cards. We have more content to make, more weapons to analyze and practice with and figure out. This is so much better than not getting anything at all. Like I said in my reaction video, I love it when I just get handed free content on a silver platter. Splatoon 2 was big and exciting on launch, dropped a lot of players shortly after, and then slowly grew and grew through the efforts of content creators and competitive players in the months and years afterward. And that groundswell was what set up Splatoon 3 to be as exciting a launch as it was. I don't think a less than stellar update is ever going to kill the game. I'm not outraged about this, and I'm not sure I see a good reason to be outraged about it. I'm still playing the game, I'm still going to be making videos about it, Shiver's going to win the Splatfest, nothing's changed here. Above all else, please don't let something like this make you unhappy. Don't stew in a bunch of negative self-talk. Don't let negativity become a meme that you internalize in your own mind and spread to other people without thinking about it. We can enjoy things even while we can see how they could have been better. We can criticize the company in ways that don't make us feel bad emotionally. I want us to try and do that with this update, for our own sakes.